Greetings friends, this is Sanjay with part 5 of my introduction and backdrop to the Bhagavad Gita. We continue with detailing the remaining main characters. Thank you for joining me and please do like, share and subscribe to my channel. In the last video, we looked at the lineage of the Kauravas who stood on one side of the battlefield led by the mighty Duryodhana. Material desire leads all pleasure sensations. It is a formidable force to overcome on one's journey to the self. In this episode, we meet the remaining characters of this family tree who stood in opposition. But firstly, let us look at the conflict between the mind and intellect within us. Interaction with the world at large occurs through our senses. We have 5 Jnanendriya or organs of perception, the 5 sense organs through which the outside world enters us, and 5 Karma Indriyas or organs of action through which we respond to the outer world. When we contact the world, we receive stimuli by way of color and form, sound, smell, taste and touch corresponding with each of the senses. These inputs create sensory impressions which are registered in the mind and stored as memory. The reaction in the mind to the sensory impressions is one of either liking or disliking. Temporary happiness arises when the mind's demands are met. Unhappiness results from the mind not being satisfied. Accordingly, instructions go to the 5 organs of action to work either to get more of the sensory stimuli which the mind liked or to avoid those which were disliked. So the organs of action try to gratify the insatiable mind, a thankless and never-ending task. Not only are the things the mind likes ever-changing themselves, but also the mind is fickle. Something we like today, we may not like tomorrow. This is the circle of receipt, reaction and response, and is how we function. If this wheel is not checked and the mind is allowed to continue its cravings, it will be harmful, as is the case in any addiction. There has to be a control mechanism. The intellect must be involved so that it may discriminate over the mind. A sharp intellect has to be developed so as to keep the endless demands of the mind in check. This is the proper way to function, where the intellect is not bypassed but action is under its scrutiny. Let us take the example of Lord Ganesh and his rodent friend. Lord Ganesh represents the Sthita Prajna, the state of human perfection as narrated by Krishna to Arjun in the 2nd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Ganesh is shown with large ears. Traditionally, knowledge was passed by word of mouth and acquired by listening to one's guru. Thus, knowledge is accumulated and then reflected upon, called manan or contemplation, leading to wisdom, hence the large head. From this emanates the trunk, a sharp, discriminating intellect. One broken tusk indicates that such a person has overcome the pairs of opposites of the world, the likes and dislikes, the raga dvesh, which hinder man's progress. The large stomach represents being able to absorb whatever the world throws up without being disturbed. One leg up, one leg down indicates that such a person functions in the world yet has his focus on higher ideals. Lastly, the mouse, which normally is always fidgeting, yet here it sits still, signifying a mind that is calm, seeking permission from the intellect to partake in the sweets of the world, the Ladoos. For a more detailed description of such symbolism, I refer you to The Symbolism of Hindu Gods and Rituals by Sri A. Parthasarathi. The link is in the description, and to a future video of mine on the topic. So do subscribe to this channel and activate the notification. So, it is the intellect which should always sanction our action and behavior not the cravings of the mind. The mind will always want more, even at the cost of harm. One more drink for the alcoholic, a little more cake for the diabetic. The intellect has to be strengthened by acquiring knowledge and reflecting upon it, not knowledge for the sake of knowledge, but to make it our own. The desires of the mind, based on likes and dislikes, cannot be allowed to overpower reason. Back to our story. The combination of the positive discriminating faculty, Ambalika, and the power of discrimination, Vyas, produces the power of wisdom, namely Pandu. This is Buddhi, or intellect. It is Buddhi, or discriminating intellect, which can guide the mind and is the appropriate ruler. Hence, Pandu was placed on the throne of Hastinapur in lieu of his blind half-brother. As opposed to the blind mind, when the intellect rules, prosperity, peace and progress result in the bodily kingdom. Pandu had two wives, the famous Kunti and the somewhat less renowned Madri. They gave him 5 sons, again in a sort of roundabout way. Yudhisthira, Bhim, star of the show Arjun, and the twins Nakul and Sadev. Their birth is a tale to tell. Pandu carried a curse. While hunting one day, he shot an arrow and hit a deer playing with its mate. In fact, this was sage Kindama in the act of coitus with his wife. In the age-old tradition of angered sages, as he lay dying, Kindama cursed Pandu that if he ever slept with a woman, that moment would be his last. Pandu was already married to Kunti and Madri. The continuation of the lineage is once again a story within a story. Kunti, in her youth, had been bestowed with a boon by sage Durvasa. He had given her a special mantra by which she could call upon any god and beget children by them. Curiosity got the better of the young girl and she experimented, invoking the sun god. A baby boy was born. We'll come to him shortly. Strange that in a family history in which there were so many born outside the sanctity of marriage, Kunti's first child was a taboo. The child, named Karna, was placed in a basket and set afloat down a river, to be found and brought up by one of the king's charioteers. Note the similarity to Moses, who was also placed in a basket and set afloat down the Nile, to be found by the Pharaoh's daughter. Karna was the son of Suryadev, the sun god, and Kunti's first child. He was a godchild just like the other Pandavas. However, this was before Kunti had met Pandu. For her to have a child before her marriage was unacceptable, so she had to abandon him. Karna means the helm of a ship. Allegorically, someone who can be steered inwards towards spiritual consciousness or outwards towards the turmoil of material sense pleasure. Karna represents attachment or raga, the tendency of material pleasure. Thus, his friendship with material desire, Duryodhana. His story is of two sides: the son of a god, but recognized as the son of a lowly caste charioteer who raised him, not accepted by his actual family and befriended by the arch-enemy of the Pandavas, Duryodhana. A warrior to match Arjun, but not given the due credit, and remains the unfortunate hero of the Mahabharata. He ends up honoring the only person who gave him respect, Duryodhana, and fights by his side despite learning of his true parentage on the eve of the battle. Because of the curse on Pandu, Kunti was urged to use the amazing mantra she had been given. Before her marriage, she had already experimented with the sun god, resulting in Karna. Now, first she called Lord Dharma or Yam, and the union produced Yudhisthira, representing dharma, duty and justice. Second was the mighty Bhim, from the union with Lord Vayu, the god of wind, symbolizing strength. Third was Arjun, whose father was Lord Indra, the king of heaven. Kunti then gave the remaining mantra to Pandu's second wife, so that she may also have children. Madri called upon the Ashwins and gave birth to the twins Nakul and Sadev. Thus, the lower tendencies in man, led by material desire, Duryodhana, have their opposition, the 5 Pandava brothers, the sons of gods born of immaculate conception. This is a concept at the core of Christianity, where Jesus Christ was born of the Virgin Mary, also by immaculate conception. So similar concepts across millennia, yet man persists in highlighting differences instead of celebrating the unity of us all. In an earlier video, we touched on the topic that the Mahabharata is an allegorical representation of the universe, being a combination of spirit and matter. Patanjali Mahamuni gives further details in that the union of Purush and Prakriti produces 24 aspects which constitute the individual. These are Chit or consciousness, Buddhi or intellect, Ahankar or individuality, Man or mind, 5 vibratory forces, 5 subtle elements, and a total of 10 organs of perception and action. The 5 vibratory forces, or Pancha Mahbhutas, underlie the entire cosmos. These fundamental elements are not those in chemistry's periodic table, but vibrations at the core of everything in nature. They rise from the gross to the subtle and are earth or Prithvi, water or Jal, fire or Agni, air or Vayu, ether or Akash. In our body, the vibratory energy of the Pancha Mahbhutas are focused at 5 key points called Chakras. These life force energy centers are located along the spine and are linked to various organs and glands. They distribute the life energy or prana. Activating and balancing the chakras aids good holistic health, and during meditative practices, rising up the chakras is a spiritual process towards enlightenment. The throat chakra is the gateway where materiality is left behind as the seeker makes higher spiritual progress. The upper 2, the Ajna and the crown chakras, brings one closer to communion with the divine. The 5 godly Pandavas are linked to each of the lower chakras. Sadev means with gods and is associated with the earth element at the Mooladhara or root chakra at the base of the spine or coccyx. Sadev stands for restraint, the power to control the restless sense organs. Nakul is boundless flow of water, which sustains life and reproduction. He is associated with the water element at the Svadhisthana or sacral chakra. Sexual energy centered here is to be directed to the production of life and the evolution of the individual. He represents adherence to principles of dharma which enable the seeker to control the mental tendencies. Arjun comes from Raju, which means rope or bondage, and A indicating the negative, that is, not bound but free, representing our true nature, which is not shackled. Arjun is associated with the fire element at the solar plexus or the Manipur chakra. This provides fire-like force to overcome the sensual forces. Arjun is the inquiring mind, which burns like fire, destroying the darkness of ignorance. This is the reason he, out of the 5 brothers, receives the benediction of the GEETA. Bhim, associated with wind or air and centered at the Anahat or heart chakra, this is not just air but pran or life force and represents the power of vitality. Bhim was renowned for his strength. This center controls pranayam, an essential practice of yoga by which the breath is controlled and the mind is calmed. The power of the controlled breath can overcome all tendencies of the mind. This is indicated by Bhim killing all the sons of Dhritarashtra. Yudhisthira is derived from Yudh or battle and Sthir meaning steady or calm, thus calm in battle. He is associated with the element of ether, which is inert and remains undisturbed. Connected to the Visuddha or throat chakra, which is at the cusp of the material and spiritual. Yudhisthira thus symbolizes calmness in the internal battle against the sensual and emotional desires. Thus, the 5 Pandav brothers, sired by the gods, represents the strengths we need to develop to overcome the destructive influence of material desire and sensual tendencies. Tendencies are many, represented by 99 Kaurav brothers, yet only 5 positive aspects. Development of the 5 core elements and activating the 5 energy centers facilitates a healthy body and spiritual development, enabling one to withstand the pull of sensual desires. Further inquiry into the awakening of the chakras can be made in the study of Kundalini. Kundalini energy is seen as a coiled serpent at the base of the spinal cord, awaiting awakening. Optimizing energy flow in the chakras is depicted as the rising serpents up the spine. Note the resemblance of this and the symbol of the medical profession. Coincidence or concurrence? One important character who cannot be left out is the daughter of King Draupadi of Punjab. An elaborate contest was organized to pick a suitable husband for Princess Draupadi. This required the prospective candidate to lift and string a bow, then to fire an arrow to hit the eye of a suspended revolving fish, and that too by only looking at a reflection of the target. The only 2 who could even lift the bow were Karna and Arjun. Draupadi rejected Karna as he was not considered to be of the warrior caste. Few knew the truth. Arjun, possibly the greatest archer of his time, was successful and was accepted as Draupadi's groom. Bringing his wife home, Arjun said to his mother, "Look what we have brought." Without thinking, Kunti just said, "Whatever you have, share it between the 5 of you." Obeying his mother to the letter, Draupadi thus became the wife of all 5 sons of Pandu. Paramhans Yogananda describes Draupadi as the Kundalini, or the life force in the body. This connects with the 5 spinal centers or chakras to advance the spiritual journey. The life force, when activated, rises through these to transcend the physical centers and advance towards the 2 chakras above the neck, paving the way for spiritual enlightenment. Thus stand the 2 sides of the great Mahabharata war, the Kauravas and the Pandavas facing them. Within us, the pull of material desires and the forces that enable us to rise to discover our true self. Yudhisthira signifies righteousness, Bhim is strength, Arjun epitomizes courage, Nakul kindness, and Sadev is compassion. The 100 sons of Dhritarashtra and Gandhari result from the blind mind and the blindfolded intellect and symbolize the many negative tendencies within us, starting with material desire or Duryodhana. There is a constant conflict within us between those inclinations that elevate us towards spiritual growth and those aspects of our nature that pull us towards material entanglement. Last, but by no means the least, we come to the undisputed star of our story. He descends from Yadu and was part of the Yadav lineage, one of the early Indo-Aryan clans residing around Mathura along the banks of the Yamuna river. This superstar was born to Vasudeva and Devaki, and his prowess and influence has spread far and wide and through the ages. He was the son of Kunti's brother and thus cousin to the Pandavas. He is of course Krishna, Lord Krishna, the 8th incarnation of Lord Vishnu and worshipped by millions as the manifestation of God in human form. His story is an epic in itself. However, for our purposes, Krishna, the absolute central character of the Mahabharata, ostensibly remains neutral between the 2 factions and did not take up arms. He offered a choice between his personal attendants or his army. Duryodhana chose the latter. Arjun chose God incarnate, who became his charioteer on the battlefield. He is, of course, the exponent and orator of the celestial song, the Bhagavad Gita, in which he declares that he, the One, manifests whenever there is a rise in unrighteousness. Krishna in Sanskrit means dark and represents the inner self or the Atman. This is something that is dark, that is not known to man as long as our attention is on worldly experiences. Krishna is God within us, without which we are insentient and inanimate. We are Krishna, we are that one, but we do not recognize it. As Ralph Emerson wrote, every man is divinity in disguise, a god playing the fool. The two opposing sides are ready to kill or be killed. Krishna is on stage. Just as the battle is about to begin, with the armies facing each other, Arjun asks his charioteer, Lord Krishna, to take him into the middle, in between the armies, so he could see all who are gathered. Seeing all his near and dear ones, Arjun realizes that his kith and kin are about to die. He becomes despondent and overcome with grief. It is then that Krishna delivers the most sublime philosophical treatise, the Song of God, the Bhagavad Gita. Having detailed the background and the main characters on the Mahabharata stage, we have arrived at the point where the Bhagavad Gita begins. I appreciate the time you have spent in following this series and support you have given. Please do continue to like, share and subscribe to my channel and agree to be notified for future videos. Your comments would also be most welcome. Thank you. This is not the end, this is the beginning. See you soon.